I wonder if I have to change something else up.
Yeah, there's a third party. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, welcome everybody. We are back with Susan Chan and Roxanne here on um, the now fabulous Spoils. And I hope everybody is having a wonderful day today. Today is Sunday, uh, January 1st. And today in my life is a pretty important day, but we can get into that and well, I'll get into it now and get it out of the way. A year ago, my dog Beef, he was the big baby boy, but today's 1 year since he's been gone. So I do honor my dog, and I just wanted to say that because he was super special in my life. So, with that said, Miss Susan,
Okay.
we have a lot of things to discuss. I mean,
Mhm.
um, besides our pets and stuff, and you and I talked about that earlier today, but it's a lot, right?
I
Life,
can,
life in general is a lot.
yeah. And I remember learning that dogs choose their owners.
Mhm.
And I had my little buddy was a Yorkie, had him for
Yeah,
16 years or so, and just the best, just
right.
absolutely the best.
Yeah,
Um, I miss him as well.
yeah. They are wonderful, that's for sure. So, all right. So, I know we're gonna talk about juicing and our detox and opening up those portals to let the
Mhm.
bad stuff out, so that we can allow the good stuff to start, I guess, building up within our systems and
Right,
one day at a time, one step at a time.
right.
And last week you introduced yourself, and I would, you can introduce yourself.
Um,
I know people do know you from being here, but go ahead, please, and just share a little bit about you. And,
right.
and
So, yeah.
I was going to say, and then also, once you do that, and I didn't mean to jump, um, maybe we can discuss the importance of a good juicing cleanse. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, definitely. So I am Suzanne Chan, and I am autistic health coach at this time. And the reason I came to this journey in my life was I had been doing deep tissue massage therapy for 20, 25 years. And at that point, you're an athlete. And I loved my work, absolutely loved it. And it was just wonderful, a real blessing. And then one day, I got a tick bite. And long story short, it could have been prevented. I went to a medical professional who was supposed to know about these things, and they pretty much mocked me. I literally had the tick bite in me, and I was asking them to look at it, and they were like, "No, no, let's see if you get sick." That was literally the response I got. And
Mm,
sure enough, within a week and a half, I came down with a meningitis fever that, if I wasn't already so healthy at 51, it would have killed me. And
mm,
therefore spent the next 4 years in bed, because then at that point they're like, oh well, I guess you really did have a tick bite, and it really was Lyme. It's kind of like you think. And it just collapsed my whole life. I went to being, physically fit, happy, just, bouncing my step, all the trauma and drama behind me, and looking forward to, the rest of my life. And yeah, no, the universe had a different plan for me. And I am well acquainted with these situations, I guess, that, like life will throw you a curveball. And so I just took it on as an assignment from God that I needed to figure this out, because Western allopathic medicine tried their best for 4 years with their antibiotics, and it was not working. And it was determined that I would spend the rest of my life, then at 55, uh, for the rest of my life in bed. like completely disabled. And they were like, have fun with that. So I knew from all the years that I had done holistic healing with massage and heard so many wonderful stories that God would not abandon me and that this was an assignment. And I took it on, and was rewarded with so many beautiful, deeper understandings about my own body and the inner terrain and how we can live in this toxic world that we're in. So so therefore I wrote a book when I finally recovered called The Gift of Lyme Disease and Co-Infections. And it's about my journey and how to avoid those pitfalls, because people will spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to find an answer which is not there, because the allopathic medicine does not address the linchpin, which is the lymphatic system, to understanding chronic disease and how to manage that. And so that's my work today, is helping people understand that journey. And it's not easy. It's definitely not easy, because it requires people to dig deep within themselves and to make a commitment for change. And when I was trying to recover, I would do anything to get well, 100%. Like, you tell me eat bark, I'm eating bark, anything. And it was 100% in on the journey. And I recovered very well. And, then from then on, enjoying the rest of my life, which meant kind of like veering from those parameters of how to have a pristine, crystal clear inner terrain, and finding that balance between, like I like to say, like, I like my wine and my charcuterie, and I hang out with my family, and they're all fine. And then, my inner terrain will bring me back on point when I've gone, too far, and it's time to clean up. And so that's what brings us to this juice cleanse right now, and suggested 4 times a year, to clean up, winter, spring, summer, fall. Even if you just do it once a year, excellent. So
Now, and then typically, like I've seen different fastings, juice, whether it's juice
yeah.
fast and you're
Mhm.
only juicing,
Yeah.
maybe for 21 days or 7 days or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Now, what is your thought on that? Do you think it's an individual thing, or do you think the longer somebody does it, the more results they'll get, or are they hurting themselves by doing it
Well,
too long?
you're not going to hurt yourself by focusing on cleaning the inner terrain.
Mm-hmm.
You're only going to hurt yourself, in my opinion. I'll just say, like, I would only hurt myself if I completely ignored the need, all the signals that my body is giving me, like, hey, it's getting sloppy here. Let's
Mm-hmm.
clean this up. And it depends on what you're addressing, as we discussed before. Like if a couple times a year you just want to, like, you do a little spring cleaning, right? So you do a cleanse light, 7 days, that's going to address the liver, which is great. You clean that out, and that'll address the blood, and that'll clean up quickly. And then understanding too, depending on how much you adhere to that protocol, then it's going to go back. Okay, fine. So, understanding how to use the tools that we're sharing here as like a gas brake, right? So gas, it's going to move you forward in your cleansing. And then if the symptoms get too much, then it kind of a break, right? So, like, all right, let's slow this down. I don't need to clean that much. Whereas if someone is really addressing a serious situation, like I was with chronic neurological Lyme disease, where it's like, that's all she wrote, done deal. I was praying to God to just end it, to take me, which is not like me. It's like I couldn't take it anymore. But when you find where that place is for you, either just spring cleaning, like for me, right? So I can do a cleanse light, or like, I do a week or two or whatever, and I'll just zhuzh it up a bit. Or if I'm really getting serious symptoms, I'm going to go all the way. including for something like, the C word or something like that, which, we don't talk about that, because what we understand when we're doing this inner terrain clean, I deal with the acid alkaline balance. This is science. 7.34 is the inner terrain. Either you're too acidic or you're too alkaline, which is hard to get too alkaline, but it can be just as devastating. It's like you can be lights out, right? So understanding, 7.34, there's no such thing as disease when you understand that. It's just you're too acidic. And all the symptoms that you have, the body can only express itself in so many ways. So, like Lyme disease, they say can be misdiagnosed as MS, Parkinson, ADHD, many, many other diseases. And to my thinking, it's only because the body has so many ways to express it. And then also understanding throughout your lifetime, you have traumas and like emotional traumas or physical traumas to the body. So those areas are now weakened, right? There's no oxygen flow, or at least a diminished oxygen flow to those areas where that's going to clean everything up, because you want your cells to repose in clear water, like a very clear, beautiful, pristine environment. Right. And today, these days, we're sludge from head to toe. And so our cells are suffocating and drowning and dying. And when you're dealing with the blood, that's a kitchen. Think of that as the kitchen in your body. It's a closed circuit system distributing nutrients and oxygen, 1/3 the volume. When you're dealing with the lymphatic fluid, that's 2/3 the volume, and that's a lipid. So you can't just drink water and then wash that away. It's got to be something more astringent, say with red grapes and fruits and berries. And that said, you can also understand that it's very challenging to just do fruits for a period of time, especially when you're used to having lots of food, because you're going to have parasites in you, right, from these certain foods that you're having. And they're going to call for, so if you have a craving, so this relates back to, I remember reading a study about how in the cigarette industry, they were chastised in a court case about having all of these chemicals in there, one of them, sugar, and that created these parasites in us that called for a desire for the cigarette. So you just become a human filter satisfying the parasites in you, right? So that's another thing to understand. What are we really addressing here, and how do we control that? Is it me with hunger, or is it a parasite in me, that I'm addressing? If you eat a lot of fish, if you eat sushi, you're going to have parasites. Fish have parasites, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. That's okay. It's just, how do we manage the inner terrain so that we manage that control over our lives to keep us aligned with, like health and wellness and homeostasis and all of that.
So my thought on that, you mentioning fish, but I think any kind of meat is going to have parasites in it. Any living being,
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, fish live in water, and water can be pretty gross, because what's in the water? A lot of waste, right?
Right.
So that's another thing. That's another hurdle that we have to,
Yeah.
Think about. Not trying to scare people, and I know you're not either. We just want to expand your minds,
Right.
and think.
Absolutely.
So,
And that brings me to, like, I was studying the Bible, right, to find answers to get well, because there are definitely answers in the Bible. And I remember reading that, like, we shouldn't eat crustaceans, lobster, shrimp, like clams that live on the bottom of the ocean, which I grew up on all of that. And but it's because they are feeding on the bottom silt of the water, which has all of these toxins that go down, and live there, and that's what they're consuming, right? So that's just another variation, and so
I heard a story a long time ago, and it may not be 100% correct, but the story that I heard is um, in it was a friend of mine that had lived in Nova Scotia as a young child.
Mhm.
And the fishermen, they would bring in, all these lobsters and like, we all think of it as really like, I don't know, luxurious type foods, right? And fine dining and whatever,
Yeah,
cracking the shell to get to the surprise, right? The meat.
right.
And then the other kids in this area, they wouldn't eat the fresh catch coming in daily. They looked down upon it.
Mhm.
And they were eating bologna sandwiches. I'm
Right.
like, that to me is just, that's nothing good in that. So
No, definitely not.
that's
Agreed.
my opinion on that. And I'm wondering if any of those people are still alive to this day. How
Yeah,
healthy are the ones that ate the fish? And then how healthy are the ones that had
right.
the bologna?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I
So,
remember hearing too about the lobsters up in, like up in Maine area, they would catch the lobsters. And it was just this little thing that's actually long ago what they would feed the prisoners because they thought it was, like the lower class food kind of thing. And they would
mm,
just like feed it to the prisoners, be like, "Ooh, today, like, how else are you going to have butter? How else are you going to eat all that butter?" So,
right, right. So, um, something we spoke about in the last meeting. We talked about a lot of different things, but we spoke about water and the fact that you only drink distilled water.
right.
And now, how long have you, I guess, been drinking distilled water? I mean, your whole life or
No, no,
since?
no, no, no. Again, this is, like studying
Hmm.
the inner terrain, the inner health. I began to understand how polluted the waters are. Even
Hmm.
well water has to be tested. I used to live in the Rhinebeck area, and there's a lot of farms out there. And even though I had well water, I still had to have it tested because of all of the pollutants that they would, like fertilize the crops with, and then go down into the waterways. But I started in earnest around 2016 to really, like that was my thing. Always distilled water. Maybe even earlier, but for sure, like that's for me. That was the real mm, mm, serious point. That's when I published my book because I
Hmm.
had been doing from 2011 to 2015, like doing all of these things, and I was working with people. Right, I had recovered quite well within 6 months, not enough to go back out into the world and do massage again or anything like that, because that takes tremendous focus. It's not just like, oh, I'm just rubbing oil on somebody. It's this whole uh, it's a lifestyle,
Hmm.
mindset, a whole interconnection, and all of this thing. It was beautiful. I loved it. I miss it very much. But
Plus, it's so physical,
yeah, yeah,
obviously, but it's very, I mean,
extremely.
you're using every muscle you have
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
you know, help the other person with what they're dealing with.
Right.
So,
Like a lot of people want a 90-minute massage. So you're perpetually moving for 90 minutes and you're focused and you're stretching this and the whole inner visualization of like what I'm doing to someone else's body. And then that transference that happens when you're a real empath and you're doing this work. And then you can just literally feel like their stuff just coming into you. I'm like, so then I got to go and get rid of that myself. And there's a whole life process that happens when someone works at that level to cleanse, their own body, and which is part of why I think that I struggled so much with the Lyme. And I could, and it really just hunkered down
mhm.
just because I not only had all my stuff, but then everybody else's stuff too. And I didn't understand that process that took 20, 25 years to build up. I remember I had my office and I would be waiting for the next client to come in and be like, oh, my knees, like, why is my knee hurting? my knee never hurts,
Mhm.
And then the next person would come in, new client, be like, yeah, I had this problem with my knee. Oh, okay, great. I
Oh
got that.
yeah. So you're taking on their energies as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right, right.
So,
So I no longer do massage today
mhm.
because, especially because of shedding,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
not wanting to take that back into my body again. I completely understand.
Mm.
And I'll massage my children, my own family. Mom, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you know. And then whatever they have, like, Mom, I got a stiff neck and shoulder. And
Yeah.
then for the next day or two, Mom has like,
Mm.
and they're like, oh, I
Right.
feel really good. Thank you. So
Aw, you're
it's
like paybacks.
it's
Paybacks. Come on,
love.
guys.
Love. This is
Yeah.
love. Yeah.
Aw. Um, so when it comes to, I guess certain types of juicing for certain
Right.
detoxes,
Mhm.
right? I know
Mhm.
the liver is a big one because
Yeah.
that filters out all of our, well, between the liver and the kidneys, I mean that's our filter
And the
system,
spleen. And the spleen.
right? And the spleen.
Right.
Um, so we spoke a little bit about beets and asparagus and then eating a raw apple.
Right.
But
All
you
the
have to eat
time.
the apple, not juice the apple.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
and that's more for uh, like a cleansing yourself from flukes, correct?
It's just
That one? Or
all
does
kinds
it
of
all?
cleansing. It's
Okay.
going to be, the biofilm. It's going to
Mhm,
drag because eating the apple is going to have that fiber in it. Whereas when you're juicing the beet and juicing the asparagus,
mhm,
you're getting the juice from that.
mhm,
And remember, we talked about like if you cut a beet on a cutting board, like
mhm.
the juice, it goes everywhere, right? So same thing within the body, and it's detoxing it. And the apple is really cleansing. It's going to go through your gut and carry that stuff out. And that's a
Makes
really
sense.
important part is making sure the exits are open. That's our focus when we do something like this, because then you can move on to things like parasite cleansing, which we don't, you're not doing that. You're not focusing on that when you're doing your juice cleanse,
Mhm,
right? Because you're
mhm.
going to end up, here's a nice little thing, like see that person like, you're going to get to that point soon enough,
Woohoo! Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's
That's
how
when you know you're doing it right.
you got to that place, you know.
Yes.
And I told you before about the story of a mother who brought her young daughter 7 or 8, and starting with the herbs and the cleansing and all this kind of thing, and the child was just like puking and puking, and the mom's like, oh my God, you're supposed to help my child, and then they're getting sick, and but you have to explain to understand like that puking, right? That puking, that could be tomorrow's tumor because you're
Mm.
getting that toxicity out of the body, right?
Mhm.
It's a visceral thing. It's like squeezing a toothpaste. So I mean, when I was detoxing, let me tell you,
Mhm.
I was just like fearless, like whatever, just bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
About using oil of oregano, it's just like like that for like 3 days.
I'm gonna highlight that screen, so go ahead and if it will
Right.
let me
So,
highlight it.
but 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 I don't have
Right.
fear around that.
Yeah.
If I get the flu, like the flu season came around this year, and I got a good bout of it because I was in an environment where it's just like a petri dish, right? My
Mhm.
holiday sales kind of thing, and but I don't mind that because I actually love it. I welcome it because it's a detox for my body. I'm blowing
Mhm.
my nose, and all I imagine is all that lymph that's in my brain clogging. Oh, it's all coming out.
Mhm.
It's cleaning my body. So I don't worry about a fever. Of course,
Mhm.
like you're too high of a fever, but if you got fever and chills and you got a runny nose and diarrhea and stuff, that's your body's automatic response to cleaning itself out. It's flushing. It's flushing. It's like flushing the toilet.
Mhm.
Do it. Why are you so afraid? Like we're so worried about these symptoms that is really the body signal, like, I'm doing my best here. Like, you have a really awesome functioning, like immune system.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. I mean, so I want to talk a little bit about that too with our immune system and
mhm,
just the overall importance of eating well and
right,
hydration. And then
right.
the other thing too is I know you and I, we both are involved in Lifewave,
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
we have some great patching protocols to
Yeah,
boost our immunities. And
right.
one of those is the glutathione patch,
Absolutely.
which we both know it elevates our own glutathione levels by 300%.
Amazing.
I don't know anything else that does that. I mean, I've had glutathione IVs,
Mhm.
and you feel great for like a day, but then, it goes through your system pretty quickly. So,
Right.
um, and I'm not knocking any of that because it's all good, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um,
With the
but
caveat again that, if you're doing like the vitamin C, any kind of chelation and everything, what they don't focus on is making sure prior to all of that that your exits are opening. Because if they're not, all you're doing is rearranging the toxicity that your body has brilliantly squirreled away somewhere, like in little fat areas to protect your vital organs from being, eaten up by battery acid.
mm.
So you're just actually making it more dangerous and
So we
more.
have to cleanse, like really do a flush, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and in order for everything to function properly,
right.
right? So
Mhm.
yeah, but yeah, um, but I love the glutathione patch in conjunction with the X39 and X49. Um, and then I will say this, right now with LifeWave, when somebody signs up with you with an advanced kit or higher, they will receive a free sleeve of the glutathione patches.
Right.
And my
And you can,
understanding is you will also get one. So when
yes.
you sign
And,
somebody on, yeah,
and then depending on which level they sign up, you can get as many as three
yes,
sleeves.
yeah,
That is
yeah.
a high value.
That's a
And
$150
right
value.
there, right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And I have to admit that I was so focused on keeping my energy up while I was doing it that I didn't put the glutathione on faithfully. I was more focused on the energy enhancer and the 3949, right, which was wonderful, but I didn't focus on that. And as soon as I got hit with the symptoms, you reminded me. All right, I put the glutathione on, and I did recover. It helped a lot. But
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder what would have happened if I was smart enough to start with it in the beginning. So
Oh,
live and learn, live and learn.
right, right. Um, I mean, last week I felt like I was starting to come down with something. Everybody in the house was sick, and I'm like, it's not getting me, and I was patching my kids, and I'm like, come on, guys, just do this. And within 2 days, they were better. Um, and I never got really sick, but I started to feel like I was, and I put that glutathione patch on. Um, Again, wearing X39 and 49, and never got sick.
Yes.
Like I want to say, like within the first few hours, I felt whatever that was kind of just go away. So
Right.
that was pretty interesting. Plus, I'm doing the juicing,
Right.
so like trying to cleanse my innards, right? To be more on top of my game.
Yeah.
So
Just
yeah, and I think
just
that's all we can do. You know.
it. Right? It's like we do have to live in this world, and part of living in this world is having pleasure, right? I don't want it to be punishing or anything, but like I said, if you're dealing with something like a high level serious issue, then I'm willing to endure, whatever it takes.
Hmm.
And I was fearless. And back then when I was doing it, like from So I got the tick bite in 2007. I got Lyme, and then from the to 2011, I was working with allopathic. The antibiotics. It was on you're good, off you're not. And then from 2011 on, I was just like trying to explore the internet. And back then, the internet was so new and so pure. I think I was so lucky because people who were on, who I followed, were just full of integrity, and they just put out, with their whole heart, the best stuff. And I was, would follow it. And now I go on and I'm like, oh, I would never be able to figure it out. I wouldn't, because I had a system that was, basic and pure. And in my way of thinking, I would be like, how come, my grandmother, she lived to 96, 97 years old, full health. Like, how come that generation is so healthy and ours is so toxic? And then I began to study their ways, like cleaning out the colon, right? And living just pure and simple, not like the toxicity of, a rich man's life. I forget the whole phraseology, but, like a king's diet.
Right. Well, wine and cheese and meat and, and
Yeah.
enlarged things that shouldn't be enlarged,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
and then don't forget the gout,
That's it.
you know. So
And I
I still,
started
I
to
still,
yeah. And that's one of the symptoms that I had when I had really serious Lyme before I started cleansing and juicing and doing all of that. It was like my big toe would hurt. I'm like, why is my toe hurting? And then I
mm,
began to study gout, and then I began to, so it was all of these little markers that would be like, oh, like pulling a thread and then follow that thread all the way there.
mhm,
And one of the most important philosophies that I follow is you can know all the right things to do, but if you don't do them in the right order, they're not going to work, right?
true,
So,
true.
like we said, if the exits aren't open and then you're going after something like serious parasites, like some of them, I have my book. Where's my book? Hold on, let me go get my book. Hold on. I need to mark this page. I forgot. But they literally have teeth that anchor into like your intestinal wall. So if you go to remove them too
Mhm.
aggressively, they'll just rip. They'll just rip your intestines
Mm.
out, right out along with them. Oh yeah, yeah. Ready? Gross. Look at that.
Hang on, let me highlight. Let me.
Right. You love it.
I don't know why I can't highlight you. That's weird.
Do that. You know, like you start cleansing and you're going to get like worms and stuff. You'll notice, like worms come out in your stools. Like
Mm.
that's a parasite that you have now gotten out, and you should be really, really happy about that. You know, look at these lovelies. Like, ugh, it's a fish with a
Yeah.
parasite in it, right? You
Uh,
know, it's
yeah.
gross, but it's real.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's,
lice
it's
lice and all those kind of things.
uh,
So Mother Nature, here's the thing, when we have an invasion of things like that, Mother Nature would not abandon us. Mother Nature provides for us. And one of the really beautiful things I learned from a woman, her name was Lady Barbara, I think she's passed on now, but she had Lyme for a long, long time. And she worked with, I forget the herbalist name, a very famous guy. But anyway, there was teasel root, right? And it's this invasive roadside weed that they say, which, we don't want to disparage the beautiful gift that we have with teasel root, but the formation was a thistle with like a hook that came up around. So the function of teasel root was to hide, to coax the spirochete out of its hiding places. And then you follow that up with Japanese knotweed tincture, which is like a resveratrol, it's an antibiotic, right? And so again, like low and slow. And I found these things out. I'm like, okay, then I would just do that, and understanding that when you do holistic healing,
mm,
it's not these mega doses of like boom, boom, boom. No, 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 no. It's very delicate, right? So when you're working with something like tinctures and very defined energies and stuff like that, if you take a heavy medication on top of it, a pharmaceutical, that it would just wipe out all of the benefits. So understanding that world, you know,
Yeah,
competing energies is important.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, um, I've been a nurse for many years.
Mhm.
um, and I've seen both sides of medicine.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I was in the hospital, it was all Western, um, you know, pill after pill. And, you
Right.
know, one, one thing I will never forget, I was on a med pass, and I don't know if I said this in a previous discussion, but and you have so much time to give out the medications to your patients, right? Because you're timed
Right.
and everything's a number.
Mhm.
And so anyways, the patient's room, I was in this patient's room, and you have to scan their barcode, scan all the medications because everything, like I said, is a number and there's barcodes for everything. Um, I must have scanned probably 23 different pills
For one person.
for one person who was elderly and frail. And I was talking with her, and she was she's somebody's grandmother, somebody's mother, somebody's sister. And, she's like, I'll just take the whole thing at once. She took this whole cup like it was a shot. I'm like,
Right.
holy moly,
Right.
and she's like, because the thing of it is, with that many different, some of them were vitamins, but most of
Mhm.
them were medications. And I'm thinking, wow,
How are they
something,
interacting? Yeah.
something is, you know,
Yeah.
off, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to say anything to get myself in trouble.
You already know.
um, so I just have been since then, and that was over 20 years ago.
Wow.
And
Yes.
just that one patient
Yeah.
with that many pills to
Yeah.
take at one time floored
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, how is this how is this living?
Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
to this day I'm like, man,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
I believe in I value HIPAA, the
Absolutely.
privacy.
Yeah.
And like even during a Reiki session, when I give a Reiki session to somebody, distant healing, I don't talk about what went on, you
Right.
know. But if that individual wants to discuss what went on, or how
Yeah.
they felt and what they experienced, that's
Mhm.
fine. But I'm not going to disclose, your information or whoever's to
Yeah.
anyone else. That's a
Yeah.
private thing. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's just,
as we're talking about before too, it's like when we're working on people, because I do the flower essence healing,
mhm,
and it's when you're not your traumas, you're not your wounds, you're not all of those injuries.
mhm,
Of course they make a mixture inside of you, but really it is advantageous to not be a victim, rise above it. These things are brought into our life, in my personal experience, to develop our spiritual soul. They challenge us. And I remember talking with I was volunteering at a farmer's market in town a couple summers ago, and one of the other volunteers was a retired doctor, and so we were chatting a bit, and he was absolutely lovely. And then he asked me about the Lyme, and he goes, well, like, what was that for you? And I was like, well, it just brought me closer to God. And he laughed. He loved that. It's like, Everybody should be like, think like that.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
God is not going to abandon us, and we have to
Right.
understand that. And then how do we unwind that?
Yeah.
And then to separate out to the medical system where, like surgeons, that's a whole nother area.
Mhm.
Like I surgeons are amazing. Like that
Mhm.
you operate on another human being, and that has nothing to do with the lymphatic system that, like to manage a chronic disease is very, very different. When you're
Mhm.
managing a chronic disease, you have to address the inner terrain and understand why is this happening. And the doctors, they're brilliant. Like, look how much they learn. My God, deep respect for them. But
Mhm.
they don't understand. They don't study like why is this happening. They just know, okay, this is a symptom, and they were just, hammering a nail. But they
Yeah.
don't understand to
Okay.
unwind that.
When I was in nursing school years ago,
Mhm.
I don't think we ever spent any time on, especially what we're discussing.
Yep.
Nothing like that.
Yep.
Um, we had, I think, 3 weeks rotation with this woman um, talking about breastfeeding. And she's up in the front of the room, jumping up and down. And like, she's like, okay, what am I doing? And, you know, there was probably 150 students in this auditorium. And I'm like, I don't know, making milkshakes? She's jumping up and down. And
Wow.
I don't
Yeah.
even remember what she laughed, but,
Yeah.
and the whole class laughed, but I honestly don't even remember
Yeah.
why she was doing that. I'm like,
Right.
what are you doing?
And
It
the
just like,
quality and the quality of the mother's milk is
yes,
critical to
yes.
it relates to the mother's inner terrain.
Hmm.
You're going to get some that's very thin and not nutritious at all, maybe even too acidic and harmful to the baby. Right. I remember, of course, I breastfed all my children, etc. And I remember learning about broccoli. Like if I ate broccoli, it would give the baby gas,
Oh yeah, that happened.
right?
Yes, yes.
Right? So to make that connection,
Mhm.
like if you're having, like especially diet soda or just like awful and just eating like garbage, you're going to produce garbage milk, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
anyway,
Well, we have to think about what we put into our mouths,
always,
right?
always.
Um, and I mean, I understand. I, I guess empathize. People, depending on where they're coming from financially, they're gonna do what they can do in order to get a meal, you know. But I, I don't eat fast food. I think the fastest food that I eat is probably pizza from the pizzeria that, I know that I know the owner there, and my son used to work at the
Right.
pizzeria, but that, uh, you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just, I won't go to those places. So,
No,
you
no.
know,
You take your
no,
life in your hands.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
But, gosh, um, the water is amazing. And something I wanted to ask you about because I
Mhm.
discovered it. Well, you told me, but then I found this thing online today, and it has to do with cleansing yourself. One of the ingredients is walnut hull.
Yeah.
And I know you and I spoke a little bit on that, but for people who maybe aren't familiar with that, can you maybe talk about it a little?
Right. So again, back to when I was studying, Lyme, and then understanding that this was an entity existing in me, like a little free rider, little parasite. So I started studying herbs to get rid of parasites. So I
Mm-hmm.
made like concoctions of teas, and it was like I remember I had wormwood, pardiarco, all different kinds, and then also there's walnut hull, which is like a ground up walnuts,
Mm-hmm.
like and
Mm.
and and there are lots of herbs out there when combined to get rid of parasites. And we don't want to just kill the parasites in us. This is why we want the exits open, right? The fecal matter, the urine, sweating, or gas that we breathe out, and so on, is because they will willingly leave, but the exits have to be open. So if we come in too aggressive with any kind of tincture or any kind of whatever, we had our discussion about all of that. It's like they'll go, but if their exits are blocked, then they die in you, and then that puts out another whole chemical soup that we have to clean up on top. And by the way, when they're living in us, they are excreting their own toxicity, right? They eat, they go to the bathroom too, in us. So not only do we have to clean up our own cellular metabolism, we have to clean up their garbage too, right? So if they die in us, that's real. Ooh, that's real serious to clean that out. So we do it in stages. That's why, like if we want to lose weight, first we get healthy, right? We start eating right, and then the weight will naturally come off, right? It'll be a lot easier to lose the weight. Same thing with anything that you're doing inside your body, in your inner terrain. Is like you lay the groundwork first, and you think like that, doing the right order so that what you're doing works, right? So you don't want to slam dunk any kind of walnut hole or any kind of, parasite cleanses, even cilantro, right? That will clean out toxicities in the body. But it's dangerous to move this stuff around if the exits are not open. And we spoke about, like the massage industry. I learned, massage, love massage, extra, extra wonderful. There's a lymphatic massage technique, which is very light, like the weight of a nickel, right? You move it around very gently. And the whole concept is to move the lymph from these toxic places up, and they move it through the heart chamber. And when you really understand, and it's a big, corner of the industry. Okay, so they're not going to open up their minds to change erroneous ways, right? So they don't stop to think that this lymph, nuclear waste, battery acid, we're taking it from, the places that the body has brilliantly tucked it away so it doesn't harm the visceral organs, but yet we're moving it up and we're bringing it through the heart. Like, how insane is that? Like, the heart is pristine, pure, has no business going through the chart. You're putting battery acid through this beautiful, pure chamber. What are you doing? They should be thinking, take this lymphatic fluid and move it to the kidneys, which is responsible for filtering out the lymphatic fluid. So it's like everywhere you turn, like, wake up, wake up, wake up. It's so basic. It's so basic. Get deep, go deeper. That's why I really appreciate Lyme, because it taught me to go deeper, because pain is a great motivator. Being homeless, not being able to work, having to live with family members who, after a couple of years are like, thought you were so healthy. How come you're so sick? Thanks for that, but it's true. It's true.
So I worked at this wellness center, and the doctor spoke about not only the lymph, but the glymph system.
Yeah, in the brain.
Which are the lymphs within the brain.
The lymphatic system is in the brain. That's why when I said, when I get a cold and I'm blowing my nose, when I have boxes of tissues, or I just get out some old washcloths, I'm going to stack and just go through that, like, I'm so happy because the lymphatic system is working in my brain, emptying out all of those toxicities, which is removing the plaque, which is causing Alzheimer's. And, what else? What else? Tumors, I don't know. Use your imagination.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely correct.
So there's so much, I think, importance when it comes to our own health, but as a nurse, okay, we go to the emergency room when we need to, right? For something serious.
Right. Yeah.
But I think on the other side, the holistic side, do as much as you can to better yourself or to get out of, maybe where you were
Right.
a year
Right.
ago,
Right.
and change your diet, get on a different system, um, start juicing. By the way, I wanted to just share briefly, the juicer that I have is
Mhm.
by Kuvings, and that's Kuv as in Victor Ings, and they have like this whole recipe model of different juicing and different blends, but then they also have a section, um, where it tells you what you can do with the pulp, because the pulp is released into one canister and then the
Right.
juice comes out the other canister, as the fruit and veggies are being ground down,
Right.
there's, like you said, the exits are open, so these are two different, you know
Mhm.
outages. One is for the pulp, but they tell you, like, you can add the pulp to your muffins, or
Ooh, yeah.
you can, so if you wanted to do that, there are different things, different uses for
Right.
this, so it's not just waste.
Right.
But I take the pulp and I put it on my plants outside
There you
so
go.
that they'll benefit from the nutrients in there. And then,
Absolutely.
like, for people that have chickens or hens, I mean, the
Mhm.
birds would love that. So that's another thing, rabbits, all those little critters are gonna love that.
The black bears that roam around town around here. We have black bears that,
Ah,
like they'll just walk down the street. It's like
wow.
first
Yeah.
people were shocked, but now, yeah, and they're harmless. They'll be,
Yeah.
the kids will walk down the street going to school, and then there's the bear. But they would feast on that, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm
So
sure. I'm
yeah,
sure.
so
So,
that up.
yeah. So I've noticed too that some of my plants, seem like they're prospering very well. I have, and that's just another thing, but I am working towards my food forest.
Yeah,
And
I love
so
it.
juicing is a great thing to help with to help with that too.
And that's right, because it is expensive. When you're taking the juices, and if you're only taking the juice out there, like if you can make zucchini bread,
Hmm.
right? How
Yeah.
wonderful would that be, right? I
Yeah.
remember I remember long ago doing that. You know, that's your thing. That's wonderful.
Hmm. Yeah. So, well, there's many different uses for not only the juice, but also, you know, the pulp that's left behind. So,
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely.
So, I just saw that uh, earlier today
I love it.
on their website. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. But thank you, Susan. I appreciate your time and your you're such a wealth of knowledge on so many levels, and I really appreciate talking with you and having you on here. So, yeah.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate
thank
you
you.
as well. Because
All right, and then how can people find you?
so the best way is just send me an email at
Mm-hmm.
Suzen, S-U-Z, like zebra, Zen, Z-E-N,
Mm-hmm.
at Suzen Health Coach at gmail.com.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
I have a Lifewave website, but if you just send me the email and then in the subject put either detoxing or juicing or Lyme, then I see that right away, and I answer,
Yeah.
and it's like we'll have a conversation. I love to have a
Excellent.
conversation. Yeah.
Excellent. And then your book that you wrote.
Yes. There's my book. So I also send it to you, and hardcover. The Lyme disease
Nice.
going on. And it's I wrote it so that it's for the Lyme brain,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't focus, you can
Mm-hmm.
hardly read, it's so difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and you're awake at night because the spirochetes, that's when they grow. right? So all of a sudden you wake up and you got restless leg and you can't go to sleep, and it's so
Oh,
unsettling. It's really upsetting.
yeah.
So I made this so that it would just sit on your nightstand, right? And just grab it and just open to any page and you're going to get an answer, right? So I put the cautionary tale in the front, what I went through and how I avoided spending, $100,000 of money that I didn't have because I was unemployable, could not work, and therefore homeless after, years. And then I put the answers in the back, exactly what I did. Simple
Wow.
things, simple things. I
Yeah,
I do it so I can teach a third grader how to do this. Not
that's
complicated.
great.
Yeah.
Now, for somebody out there who's listening to us and they just heard you say spirochetes, those are the baby parasites.
That
Or am
that
I
is a
wrong on that?
it's a cork. So that's the Lyme,
Yeah.
right? It's a corkscrew spirochete, and it's part of the syphilis family, right? So it's a spiral, and what it does is it will stay if you get bitten by a tick that has Lyme. Not all ticks have Lyme, and it's
Mhm.
usually the deer tick, which is little. It's not usually the big dog tick. It's the little one, but they say you can get it from the mosquitoes, and who knows? I don't know, but it's the corkscrew spirochete that when enters the bloodstream, you can take an antibiotic for like up to about 8 days, and it's supposed to, I've been told, address it at that point. And after that point, it will corkscrew into your bone, cartilage, organs, brain, all the places medication can't go. And that's when you start to get into the problems, right? So that's when you start to get into like tinctures to coax it out of the hiding places. And then understanding too where here's the really special thing is like your personal injuries, your emotional traumas, your physical traumas. That's where for you Lyme is going to hunker down. It's going to be different for everybody. So that's where your personal story comes into play, and that will reveal itself over time. So that's another thing. Like you'll have emotions rise up, like energy cysts will rise up and be released, and that's kind of like you kind of tripping back over memories, and like, oh, I remember this, and you go through it and understand that that's a blessing. And it's being released. It's not for you to ruminate and go, oh, oh, poor me. No, no, no. It's being lifted up and let go. And that's a beautiful thing, right? So there's
Yeah.
distinctions. So when I work with
Um,
people, it's like making those very specific distinctions for
mm.
people.
Well, that's wonderful that you're able to help people through your own unfortunate experience. But you know what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? And smarter.
Lemonade at times. It's all good.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
good.
All
God's
right.
not going to abandon us.
Uh, well, I appreciate you explaining that to all of us, and thank you again for being here. And we'll talk next week too. So,
Great.
yeah.
Very good.
Yes. All
Thank
right.
you, Roxanne. I appreciate
Oh,
you.
thank you, Susan.
All
All
right.
right. All righty. Bye, everybody.